Please state your name and address for the record.
Centuria Johnson, 4422 Hickory Hill Road, Memphis, Tennessee, 38141. Good evening, Commissioners. Before I begin, let me thank you all for this miraculous opportunity to witness what can only be described as the eighth wonder of the world, the magical, transformative powers of More for Memphis. Yes, we are here today to marvel at a phenomenon so groundbreaking, so revolutionary, that it should be studied by scientists, economists, and perhaps even theologians. More for Memphis has done what no one else in the history of humanity has achieved. It has turned an imaginary $100 million into a very real $1.4 billion. Hallelujah. Moreover, move over Wall Street, because Mark Sturgis and his fiscal magic show are here to save the day. Of course, we don't need proof of this $100 million. Proof is for mere mortals who live in a world of bank statements and financial audits. We, the people of Memphis, are expected to believe blindly, faithfully, that this miraculous sum exists somewhere, floating around in the ether. And like a modern-day alchemist, Mr. Sturgis promises to spend this invisible gold into a fortune for our city. I mean, if you can turn nothing into something, why stop at $1.4 billion? Why not go for $10 billion? Let's dream big, folks. But let's talk about another miracle happening in this room tonight, the miraculous phenomenon of political recusals. Now, I don't want to name names, but we all know what a recusal means in Memphis politics. It's not a sign of integrity. It's a glowing red flag that screams, I've been in bed with the deal makers, but now I need to step back before the FBI gets too curious. And speaking of the FBI, they're already paying close attention to this circus. One of my sources has informed me that they've been tipped off about the interesting timing and cozy relationships surrounding this ordinance. So, Commissioners, I must ask, which of you will be the next to recuse yourselves? And when you do, will you be kind enough to explain why you didn't just vote against this scam outright? Because let me tell you, the voters are watching, and so are the folks with badges and subpoenas. Now, back to this $100 million. Let's break it down. If More for Memphis has already raised this enormous sum, why are we even having this conversation? Why do we need taxpayers' money? Why not fund this entirely through your private donations, your imaginary pot of gold, and leave the people of Memphis out of it? Or is it because the $100 million isn't quite as real as it sounds? And while we're at it, let's ask the obvious question. What exactly is the relationship between our esteemed commissioners and the masterminds behind More for Memphis? How many private meetings have been held? How many emails have been exchanged? And how many of those conversations were about the people of Memphis versus the profits to be made by a handful of connected insiders? Commissioners, you were elected to serve the people of Shelby County, not to outsource your responsibilities to a third-party bureaucracy or enrich private interests under the guise of helping the poor. The people of Memphis deserve better than this.
Your time has ended.
Okay.
Your 3 minutes has ended. Thank you.
Thank you. And in the spirit of transparency, may the spirit of transparency bless us all, because...
Ms. Wade, if you could state your name and address for the record.
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. Monique Wade. I'm here tonight with a burning desire to express my awe, my admiration, and my absolute bewilderment at the sheer genius behind the More for Memphis ordinance. But first, let me start with a confession. I am not nearly as smart enough to understand how you've all been convinced to believe in what seems to be an elaborate game of hide and seek with $100 million. Honestly, it's a work of art, like a magic trick, but with taxpayers' money instead of playing cards. I do, however, have 16 sweet questions. I know you're busy believing in miracles, but humor me for a moment. Number one, can we see proof of the $100 million that More for Memphis is supposedly raised? Or is this like Bigfoot, something we're all just supposed to believe in without actually seeing? Number two, if you already have the $100 million, why are you here asking for more from the taxpayers? Did the imaginary pot of gold run out? Number 3, did this $300 million you say you're going to raise next, can you also provide us with the name of the genie in the bottle that's granting these fundraising wishes? Number 4, if you're so confident in private philanthropic support, why not operate More for Memphis as a private foundation? Why bring in the taxpayers into the equation of it at all? Number 5, how will Memphis residents know how this $1.4 billion is spent, or do we just have to trust that the fiscal agent will be as transparent as a brick wall? Number 7, who exactly are the founders and leaders of More for Memphis, and why aren't their names in front and center if this is all so all above the board? Number 8, and Commissioner Whaley is absent, we would like to know what your relationship with the founders of More for Memphis is. How many times have you been in their boardrooms or their fundraising galas? Number 9, commissioners, how about any of you? How are each of you or any of you, your relatives or your friends, tied to the More for Memphis in any way? Number 10, how much of this $1.4 billion will actually go to help people in Memphis versus covering overhead salaries and consultant fees? Number 11, why are taxpayers funding a system that creates another layer of bureaucracy when the money could go directly to the local programs that are already working? Number 12, why do we need a governance structure, a living document, and an annual plan when we already have elected officials and community organizations capable of solving these issues directly? Number 13, how will this ordinance address racial and economic inequality if it shuts out the very communities it claims to serve? Number 14, is there a plan to independently audit this entire operation to make sure the money doesn't disappear into the thin air? Number 15, if this all goes south, who's accountable? Who gets to take the blame when the taxpayers ask why nothing has changed? Number 16, why aren't local minority-owned and women-owned organizations being elevated instead of sidelined? Commissioners, we don't need another scheme to funnel public funds into private hands. We don't need more bureaucracy, more unanswered questions, and more money disappearing into the administrative costs. We do need leadership that serves the people, not the architects of this Trojan horse. Thank you, and may your answers, if you choose to provide them, be as dynamic as the magic tricks that we're witnessing on tonight.
Thank you, Ms.
for your
Wade.
time.
Natalie Simpson. Is Natalie Simpson still present? Okay. Gerald Kiner. Mr. Kiner, please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, ma'am. Gerald Kiner, 4400 Hickory Hill Road, Memphis, Tennessee, 38141. I'm trying to read fast, so I won't run out of time. Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. We come to praise More for Memphis and not bury it. Yes, esteemed Shelby County Commissioners, today I humbly propose a radical solution. Since we are so captivated by the brilliance of City Success and their visionary CEO, why not go all the way? Why not dissolve the Shelby County Commission and the Memphis City Council altogether and hand over complete control to City Success and More for Memphis? Clearly, they know best. Who needs democracy when we can have governance dictated by a living document and a system that breaks down the solos of government? After all, isn't it exhausting having to answer to voters year after year? Wouldn't it be so much easier to let More for Memphis set the priorities annually and so eloquently stated and forget all of these taxpayer dollars where they're going to go? We'll just let all of them go to More for Memphis. No more accountability to people of Memphis. Just pure unadulterated governance by a private entity that already claims to have $100 million in the bank somewhere, maybe. Oh, let's talk about the $100 million. They will magically turn into $1.4 billion. Of course, we should believe it exists without seeing a shed of proof. I mean, why would anyone need the proof of receipts? If More for Memphis say it, it must be true. In fact, I think we should step up a little further. Let's create a Shelby County slogan: in More for Memphis we trust. Why worry about financial transparency or public accountability when we have a word of a man so determined to break down the silos? What are the facts compared to his visions of a new bureaucratic utopia? And let's not stop there. Why not turn all public resources over to More for Memphis? Schools, hospital, parks. Let's streamline everything under the governance of More for Memphis and their notable team of fiscal agents. I'm sure they'll be just as effective at running our city and county and securing $1.4 billion of imaginary dollars. Because who really needs functioning, transparent government accountable to the people when you can have a privately managed living document dictating your future? Who needs to trust their elected officials when we can all simply place our blind faith in a third-party bureaucracy with no direct ties to Memphis black communities, minority women, or women, period, who no history of serving our neighborhoods, no proof of its funding? So, commissioners, let's just cut to the chase. Hand over the keys. Let more for Memphis be our king, our fiscal agent, and rule over Memphis with their living, breathing governance structure. Who needs oversight after all? Certainly not the people of Memphis, whose tax dollars are being funneled into an overhead vague promises of economic mobility. And if you insist on keeping your roles, at least do the people of Shelby County a favor. Stop acting like cheerleaders for more for Memphis, and let's start acting like the public service we elected you to be. Thank you, and may the solace of government never stand in the way of our blind trust again. And this would be another very easy lawsuit with the information that we have.
Thank you, Mr. Kiner.
Thank you.
Joe Kent, 5111 Flamingo. With the County Commission's Workforce Development Committee never meeting and Mayor Harris assigning the Chamber as fiscal agent over Federal Workforce Investment Opportunity Act funds, there is an operating conspiracy between the county and Chamber to botch the workforce development system at the expense of the local economy. Why is it a conspiracy? Because the botching has consistently happened over 10 years, and the Harris administration says they want to deepen their partnership with the Chamber. Are you kidding me? And the bullying of Amber Covington is the same thing the punk Chamber did to me. To reward the Chamber for debaucherous bully behavior and potentially underwrite a taxpayer-funded $300K workforce development board settlement, the Covington would be more support for an ongoing county chamber conspiracy to botch the workforce development system. So reject it. The Chamber is a business association, not an economic workforce development agency that represents the needs of major corporations, developers, and themselves to the detriment of the local economy. That is it. The Chamber wants massive tax increases fully shouldered by small business and residents to fund non-transparent public-privates like More for Memphis to serve as a redundant Memphis Tomorrow installment branch of local government. The More for Memphis item does everything to erode checks and balances as taught in high school U.S. government through non-transparency. It does. As I've said before, any installment of anything like Seeding Success and More for Memphis should require monthly current financials, annually audited financials, public board meetings, and the requirement for both to answer public information requests. Annually audited financials are useless alone and provide only a departmental level transactional summary that happened on average 1 year ago. So we get no current financial information on these nonprofits that get millions. None. Reject the $300K for the Chamber as well as the MFM resolution. And if District 6 Commissioner is conflicted on this item, many others of you have to be conflicted, because this More for Memphis thing involves practically every branch of local government. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kent. I have a couple of commissioners in the queue. Commissioner Brooks.